In this video, I'm going to be talking about Frisian runes, or at least Frisian adjacent runes. The first thing to note is that the Frisians used this rune and this rune, and so did the English. And so for that reason, the runes of the English and of the Frisians are known collectively as Anglo-Frisian runes. This text here is interesting. So first of all, it has these old shapes, which indicate that it might be quite an old text. You'll notice here that it has the Anglo-Frisian A rune, but it doesn't have the Anglo-Frisian O rune where we might expect it. So this could be because the O rune, the Anglo-Frisian O rune, maybe it had not been invented yet, or maybe it had been invented, but it was still standing for a nasal A. So maybe it didn't show up here because there's no nasal A to be represented. Later on, this nasal A would merge with the O, and then this rune would then be standing for an O sound, and this rune would be repurposed as a mutated O. So yeah, this might be what we're seeing here. This may be a transitionary phase where the O rune is around, but where it's making a nasal A. And it's worth noting that the same thing happened in North Germanic runes, where the A rune became a nasal A and then eventually became an O. This word right here, scan, this seems to be related to the modern English word sheen. Back then it meant something more like beautiful. You'll notice that there's the oak rune here. Now over in England, they probably would have written this word with a diphthong, represented by either this, or this, or this, depending on the writer and the time period. So what's going on here is Proto-Germanic owl became different things in English and Frisian. In Frisian, it became a long ah, and in English, it became some kind of ah sound. So the takeaway is that Frisian would never have needed this rune, apparently. Looking now at this one, we can see what appears to be an Anglo-Frisian take on this old diphthong. Notice that they're not writing it like this. So that might be because this would imply something more like I, and maybe that didn't sound quite right, so maybe they went with this, I. Maybe that made more sense to them. This right here might be the word comb, but if it is, it's missing the M rune, which is similar to a spelling convention in Elder Fusark and Younger Fusark, where the M rune and the N rune, or this here, where these two runes might get dropped in certain contexts, and this would be one of them. So, for example, in Younger Fusark, it's more likely to see a lone B rune like this than to see MB, even if there is an M sound there. So yeah, I'm going to call this nasal rune omission, and it seems to be taking place here in this Frisian, or probably Frisian inscription, but you don't see it take place in English inscriptions, so that's interesting. And nasal rune omission might also be happening here. This might be the name Wayland, like Wayland the Smith, in which case the N rune has been dropped. Something shared between these two inscriptions is that both of them use the year rune for the y sound, whereas in English inscriptions, one wouldn't be too surprised to see the G rune used instead. So you can see year here, and you can see it here. This inscription is weird because it uses this as a vowel, apparently. This is apparently how they write the C rune. There's that year I was talking about. This may or may not be a vowel rune from Younger Fusark. This and this appear to be Muir runes, so this one might be a B and this one might be a P. Over in this inscription, there's something similar to the last one, where this shape is apparently a vowel. Okay, so here are some more images. I didn't really think there was anything very noteworthy about these inscriptions, but I suppose I will share these images anyways. Something I noticed in these inscriptions is that one of them uses 3 dots like this, one of them uses 4 dots, and one of them uses 5 dots. In English inscriptions, it's more likely to see 1 or 2 dots. Now, what I'm about to say could very well be a misleading observation, but I couldn't help but notice that the Frisians seem to have preferred this variant of the B rune with a gap between the teeth, and this variant of the Anglo-Frisian A rune where this twig bends directly upwards. In England, they seem to have preferred to not leave a big gap and to have the A rune be kind of flatter. But this, as I said, could be very misleading because these variants do appear in England, and maybe if we had a complete overview of all of the inscriptions that were ever written, maybe we would actually see that there is no preference in one region for one set or the other. I also can't help but notice that the year rune shows up 3 times making the Y sound, while the gift rune doesn't show up once making the Y sound. So maybe that's just because we have a very bad sampling of Frisian runes, or maybe it shows that the Frisians preferred to use the year rune, where the English seem to have preferred to use the gift rune for the Y sound.